We're going to move now to the conversation and talk about new frontiers in the civil rights movement. Just what civil rights battles will our children fight? Our next panelists are singer, songwriter, and social activist, and someone that I've known for a long time, Harry Belafonte. And right down there, the tallest guy in the room, and he often is the first person to come out as openly gay while playing in the National Basketball Association, and that is Jason Collins.
Thank you.
And I'm going to have to tell you, full disclosure here, someone that I fell in love with several years back when she was in a movie called White Men Can't White Men Can't Jump. And it does say can't dance. Of course they can dance.
That
too. But she is activist Rosie Perez, and we're glad to have you, Rosie. I've got to tell you all something that maybe I'm the only one here old enough to know, because as is often the case, I'm still the oldest guy in the room. Harry Belafonte was a supporter of the civil rights movement, and before he even met Martin Luther King, he wrote King a letter asking for his signature. He now does a tremendous amount of work with incarcerated youth. Rosie's childhood was not easy. She was sexually abused as a child. She became a ward of the state at age 12. She knows all too well what it is like to face gender and racial barriers. And Jason Collins, of course, kept his true identity a secret until he was 32 years old, but he finally decided to come out. In 2014, he was named as one of Time Magazine's 100 most influential people in the world. Jason, isn't that amazing?
Thank you.
I think, Jason, people would just like to know something about your journey. How did this happen?
Well, the NBA lockout happened in 2011, and I was forced to look at life after basketball. I had a German Shepherd, and many nights it would be just sitting at home watching TV with my German Shepherd, and that was pretty sad. And a trainer of mine in Los Angeles did something called a It Gets Better video, and I saw it online, and it motivated me to reach out to him, to say the words for the first time, "I'm gay." And from then, I told family and then friends from high school and college, to where about 20 to 30 people knew during the 2012-2013 NBA season that I am a gay man. And after you get that love and support from the people who are most important to you, which isn't always the case, but because I had that love and support, I was ready to tell the world. And I didn't know what to expect. I knew that I still wanted to play basketball, and I felt that I could still make plays to help, our team win. But I reached a point in my life where I was tired of having, I call it the CIA cover story, and I wanted to tell the world on my own terms. I wanted to be the one that outs myself.
And are you glad you did?
Of course. My life, thank you. Thank you. My life is exponentially better. On every single level, every single facet of my life, not having that stress, being more honest and living an open life with those who mean the most to me, and also having a positive effect on other people's lives. It's an incredible feeling, and I think that's something that all of us can take part in, is having that positive effect. Because I have two nieces and a nephew, 5, 3, and 2, and I want to have a positive effect so that they grow up in a world where civil rights, where it's a level playing field for whether my nieces and nephew are biracial, they're Mexican and Black, so whether it comes down to race or if it comes down to gender, comes down to sexual orientation, let's make it better for them.
Harry Belafonte, you have, I think, have been a part of the civil rights movement far longer than anybody here. As you hear Jason tell his story tonight, how do you think the country's doing right now?
I think I have to be in concert with everybody who has said already that America is a much better place than it was when we were born into it. I think that an awful lot has happened that has brought this country to a level of civil considerations and concerns that does the nation proud. However, having said that, one has got to also pay attention to the fact that there's an awful lot that's askew. If you take a look at the prison situation in America, the largest prison population in the world, predominantly made of people who are made up of the residents of incarceration, people who are first and foremost mostly poor, mostly black, mostly male, although there are a goodly number of women who are also caught in this terrible space. And when you look at the prison system, that we're perhaps building more prison cells than we're building schoolrooms, and that you're looking at children at the age of 5 to as old as 10 who are being incarcerated in large numbers across the country, who are on the blotters. And if you look at the fact that the prison system has now become part of the stock market and private sector, and it has now become the privatization as a big blow towards labor and using prison workers, I think there is something here that we must pay attention to. Just enjoying the fact that we have the right to vote and abuse that right, incidentally, because it's amazing that we went through so much for the right to vote and that so few people have really taken advantage of it. Most of America is not registered. Most of America is not voting. That's a small percentage that makes the difference in what happens with us in the vote. So when I look at these things, yeah, I'm happy that there are no signs around that says for colored only or for white only, but that's a physical, tangible experience. What's going on in the soul of America is something else that we have to talk about. Racism has taken on another turn. When you have men that sit on the Supreme Court of the United States of America and uses their ideological beliefs to influence how they deal with justice, I think something is terribly wrong. Civil rights is under attack by these Supreme Court representatives, others as well. And I think that as much as we have achieved, I think there's an awful lot for us to be very, very careful about and concerned with.
You know, Rosie, it seems to me that, you know, we have these conversations about civil rights, and a lot of the time nobody ever quite gets around to Hispanics. Mm-hmm. It's been tough.
It's been tough, especially since we are like the largest numbers. It just doesn't make any sense. You know, I keep hearing this hurt penetrate this whole conversation. And that's real. And also accusing Americans of being mean towards each other, and that's very real. But also what James Brown was talking about, education. For me, that was my key. That was my leveling the playing field. I had so many things stacked up against me. And number one, even worse than being a woman and being a Latin woman, is that I was a Latin poor woman. I was a triple threat, you know. And but someone had told me, in America, if you study hard and you work hard, you can rise above everything. And I bought into that hook, line, and sinker. And it was disheartening at times where I'm saying to myself, I'm doing everything right. I'm getting, you know, the best scores I could possibly get. I'm getting into colleges, and still I'm being faced with this hate simply because of things that I can't change, and more importantly, I don't want to change. And, you know, and it's, you know, Whoopi and I were talking in the back, it all comes down to education, because a lot of young people do not understand what John Lewis went through. They do not understand really what Jason had gone through recently. They don't understand that Harry Belafonte put his career on the line in order to make things right. And that comes through education. The first time that I learned about black people in America was in school, and it was so humiliating and embarrassing. There's a different way that we need to teach our children. There's a different way we need to teach our children. And I don't think anyone has really addressed that. You know, when you talk about slavery and a little kid is, oh, black people are different? There's a different way. There's a different way. And I just feel that also we need to remove this tax issue in regards to education, because it's another form of segregation, right? So if you are poor and you live in a poor area, you're going to have a poor education.
That's right.
In America, it makes no sense whatsoever.
You know, to your point, Rosie, the Census Bureau, you're talking about being a minority. The Census Bureau projects that racial minority groups will make up the majority of the U.S. population in 2042.
Everyone's going to look like me.
Hispanics are now about 17% of the population. You are the fastest growing minority in the country. What do you all think? What's that going to mean when suddenly white people are not the majority in this country? That it is all of these other folks.
I love it. Like I said before, like I said before, my nieces and nephew are biracial, and already at 5 and 3 years old, they're bilingual, and you're hearing more and more other languages coming into play. And yes, English needs to be taught, but at the same time, we have to have an appreciation for people's heritage and culture. Not just, my parents always taught me to be proud of everything that makes me who I am. And I want my nieces and nephew to be the same and understand that their Mexican heritage and also their African American heritage, and we also have some Native American heritage in there in the mix as well. So it's all about appreciation and respect, tolerance. It all plays on the same field.
Should whites be afraid?
No.
They should let go of the fear. I think that's what it is.
Do you think some white people are afraid?
I think that they're yeah. I mean, if you just go on Twitter, you know, people ask me, why do you only tweet about boxing? I go, because I don't want to hear everybody's hate. You know, I just don't want it, you know, it to be even more so part of my life. And I think that the fear has to go away. And you know, I just come from a place of love, and there's nothing to fear of that. There's no reason to fear me. There's absolutely no reason to fear me. You know, but you know, things are changing, and you better jump on the train.
Harry, I want to talk, because I know this means so much to you, because you worked so much with incarcerated youth. Bring us up to speed about what that's all about.
I believe that America, with all of its power and all of its wealth, has really been able to, has not been able to, rather, overcome its deep-rooted relationship to the issues of race. I think that when the Europeans landed here, they came here looking for the openness and the freedoms that they were hoping to experience. They brought with them also their prejudices, and they brought with them their sense of alienation. What was done to the indigenous in this country, what was done to the Native American, was an indelible statement made by the incoming immigrants who came to this country to settle, that they were not willing to share, they're not willing to become part of a bigger, a more wholesome society. That theme has remained central to our DNA to our experience, to our practices. When we had burnt out on the use of Native Americans and indigenous people to do the service for Europeans in this country, when there was no longer any of them available, the Europeans went out and enslaved a large part of the African population that came to this country. So that in each instance, there were peoples of race dealing with Europeans who saw race as essential to how they defined those whom they met and treated as inferior. People of color were required to adopt the religion of Europe, to acquire and adopt the customs of Europeans, always at the expense of having to believe and to be led to believe that what they represented was somehow wholly inferior. That fact still persists. That space is still governed by those thoughts, by people who look upon people of color as somehow inferior. I think, getting back to this discussion we just had a second ago, I don't think the human heart and the human being will ever overcome a relationship to race prejudice. What I think will cleanse that part of our experience is the fact that the integration of tribes, everybody coming together, will eventually blend into one place where color will be wholly irrelevant. But the thing that most fuels prejudice is the absence of education. And I think that as long as we don't have an educated people, as long as we don't have people who can do an honest day's work for an honest pay with dignity, I think we're always going to have some scapegoat. And in America, the propensity for using race as the scapegoat for all the things we want to escape from or not have to face is part of what plagues us. In my relationship with the young people that I meet today, many are in prison. A lot of them don't know why. When you sit down and talk with them, the biggest thing that they feel is a sense of alienation. Nobody cares, nobody listens to them, nobody hears their voice. Yet when I sit and listen to them and hear their voice, I find that I'm really dealing with a community of people who are bright, who have an awful lot to offer, who have an awful lot to give, who are desperate for a part to play in helping America become what we'd all like it to be. And I don't think until we get, I'm very concerned, for instance, that black men in America should be so anemic, spiritually anemic, should be so socially anemic in how they respond to what's going on with black children who are being shot down in the streets of most American cities. Our streets run with the blood of children who are being caught up in the gun violence and the social violence. And I'm amazed at how mute, especially since the civil rights movement, which is what a lot of this is about. How could you have inherited something as rich as the legacy left by the civil rights movement and there be no voice today? Not in the black caucus, not in the black press, not in the black presence that screams loudly to this disparity. Those are the things that I'm most preoccupied with.
You know, this is such an extraordinary group sitting at this table as I just look from one end to the other. I'm just wondering, does anybody here on this side of the table have any questions for anybody on this side of the table, or would any of you guys like to ask any of these folks here anything?
Bob,
or have any thoughts?
I don't have any question, but I'm hopeful. I'm optimistic about the future. I think in this country, we're going to lay down the burden of division, and we're going to create a society at peace with itself. We don't need to be afraid. As a people, as a nation, we're going to get there. And maybe we will emerge as a model for the rest of the world. It's going to take a little time, but we got to keep pushing and never give up, never give in, and never lose hope. Be hopeful, be optimistic.
JB?
Hey, Bob, let me just say that a selfish, exclusive pursuit of power is doomed to failure. Make no mistake about it. And if I can just borrow, if you will, from the vernacular of sports, when we talk about fear from whites, if you will, for a loss of power, you know, in the sports world, we're all about teamwork. It takes teamwork to make a dream work. And when we talk about young people, to Rosie's point about young black males, the most endangered species that there is, by the time they get to the 4th grade, if they're not at 4th grade reading level, the overwhelming majority wind up in the prison system. A tremendous waste of power and resources. But they're no more loving a group of people than people of color. We've come a long ways from whence we were. Don't tell me that that wasn't a result of love. So let's do this thing the right way.
Yeah.